Hello and welcome to a special one-off video where I talk you through all the mad stuff that I've been doing. No particular structure for this, I'm just going to walk through every area of the compound and talk you through what everything does and how it all works and my thoughts behind it, some of the mods involved, etc, etc. So when I started this world, I wanted to base it around Immersive Engineering and Immersive Petroleum, i.e. being one of my favourite mods, right? And I never properly got into Immersive Petroleum, so I wanted to make sure I did that. And the second little mini goal I had was to set up various production lines, which you can see here, for various components for the mod, which I've done with varying levels of success, I think it's safe to say. But I think we'll just walk through each area, starting with this, which is the storage drawers. One of my favourite mods, definitely my favourite storage mod. It's so cool, you basically just pipe things in. So I've got a dropping conveyor here onto the, let's bring up the hub so you can see what it is, onto the controller slave, which acts as a drawer controller, and it basically finds a drawer to put it in. If it can't put it in, it continues going on into this crate. And that's it, really. You can see I've got plenty of stuff here, including there's a couple of different access routes. I've got a route in from the, I'm in creative now just for ease of access, by the way, but I've done this in survival. There's a route in here from various excavators, which I've had set up. They're switched off at the moment, but you can see here I've got excavator going into 2 crushers. Look at this madness. And then the crushers output into the arc furnace and into the storage drawers. So actually the way I've done it is the output from the excavator, it attempts to put things into the storage drawers first. Then if it doesn't go in, it continues onwards into the arc furnace. That's basically a way I've done it, because the excavator and the crusher output things like, you know, gravel and cobblestone and stuff, which goes into the storage drawers. We've got my little setup here just of small electric furnaces from Engineers Decor, which are brilliant, by the way. And then the arc furnaces themselves. This was the output from the excavator. This is what I've been using to make steel. So let's go around the corner and have a look. I do like as well, you've got kind of got like the shop floor here, and then you go around the corner, and this is how the sausage is made. So we've got these 4 what are they called? Coke ovens here, which are almost empty actually, all making coke. And then underneath these there's hoppers and conveyor belts, which output to in here into this crusher, and the crusher then outputs the stuff, coke dust, into here, which then has a hopper dropping into here when space arises. And then these chimneys, by the way, are from a mod called Advanced Chimneys. They're just cosmetic, but I think they look really cool. Yeah, then we have these pumps on the coke furnaces to output into this vast amounts of creosote that I have. And I just stopped here and thought, no, I'm just gonna burn everything on this their stack from Immersive Petroleum. So every time now another coal coke finishes, their excess creosote is just burnt, because I'm never going to need any more than that. Yeah, I quite like how this is set up with the little walkway. I don't often make things look pretty like this. I've made an effort on this world. I thought it was worth doing. We'll get into those assemblers in a moment. Then we have these 3 extra coke ovens here, which actually have hoppers set up on, which I need to fill up again. Once you have an excavator digging up coal, you just have way too much coal. A cool thing about this Advanced Chimneys mod as well is it actually combines the 3 coke ovens here and puts it all in one chimney, which is quite nice. Which means I can still walk along here and access the other stuff. I just like the 4 of them there. I think it looked good. Are all 3 of those windmills powering the furnace? I think they are. The crusher, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, these coke ovens then output into this crusher, powered by this windmill. This crusher, by the way, here's my little enchantment area nether access. Also, yeah, the crusher outputs into the, what's it called? Squeezer, which squeezes the shite into squeezed shite, which gets cooked and then goes into here to make hot graphite, and then that makes the electrodes, and the electrodes come out here under the crusher. And then it actually joins up here. The rest of it goes into here. And then when any start getting empty, I put them in here. This stuff, by the way, is from the engineer's workbench. I just put it in here temporarily. And you can combine them in your crafting grid, same as any tools. And that's it's basically a way to just combine them to get fresh ones instead of wasting them. You get, I think it's 5% extra when you combine things. But yeah, that's that. I think that's everything over here. Yeah, so we'll talk about the assemblers then. So these are basically just quick ways to make various things. So I could just chuck a load of wood in here and it just automatically creates my treated wood, which then goes into here and shows up there. It's very cool. We got another one here for the various types of scaffolding. It doesn't quite work though. I always end up with a load of extra steel rods, and I haven't been able to work out why, but we've got them for wooden scaffolding, fences, and then this one is for concrete and paper. Paper one I just had to use temporarily because I was trying to make some other mod. By the way, Control Engineering, it's a really cool mod, great features. It's not worth the hassle. We'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, then over here I did have a mixer to make liquid concrete for the oil well that I drilled. And we've got a one filled up with water here as well, and various barrels that I can use to transport things. Here are my bees. And by the way, if you put a bonfire underneath the carpet, underneath bees, they don't get aggroed when you steal their honeycomb. But because there's fire there, you can put a chimney next to them, so you can have industrial bees. This was basically because leather is always a limiting factor in immersive engineering because you need it all for these conveyor belts. What they've added in recent patches, which I didn't realize, is ersatz leather, which you can make out of honeycomb. So that's why I have these guys. That saved me a lot of trouble. Holy smokes. So yeah, should we talk about these automations then? So basically the idea is you can stick in your raw material and it'll automatically go through the various processes on the production line and it'll spit out your finished product here, right? And this one I can switch between, because plates and sheet metal are the same process. You either put things in the metal press for some plates, or you put things in the metal press for some plates, which then go into assembler, which you then make sheet metal out of. So the idea with this is I could swap between the two. This was the first one I made, and you can tell it's definitely the least refined. I even added, I installed Project Red so that I could have what's it called, a latch, and various little components and knot gates and everything like that, and wire that could go up walls, just to make things a bit easier. These are white and red because those are the only two dyes I had on me at the time. But yeah, basically, if I switch this button, it flips this conveyor belt around. See, from this latch. There's the little conveyor there. So everything comes out of these things here. And as it stands, what have I set it to? Plates. So it just goes straight out there, down into the output. Whereas if I press this button again, it now flips to sheet metal. And what that does is it activates the latch, so it flips it the other way. And this now outputs into the assembler. And the assembler makes sheet metal. And then we have the same thing over here for all the various wire bundles. Literally just mirrored the same setup. Either make just wires themselves or the coils. But yeah, you can see this absolute disaster area because I wanted it to operate through one button, right? And the one button has to illuminate the second lamp and flip this latch to do something. I think the latch does the light, but then the button itself just sends a pulse. That's it. The button just has to send a pulse. So it's so long ago since I did this. The button sends one pulse, and the pulse rotates this turntable 180 degrees. But then I also need the pulse to send a signal to this to actually flip it via the latch. Oh god, it's so complicated. I found out a better way to do it later, but it doesn't always work, right? So now we have this one which flips between iron component and steel component, and again we have a latch here, you see. This is easier because it's just one. It flips between the two. But again, it sends a pulse to a turntable, which flips you between either the component for the steel component, sorry, the workbench for the steel component, or the workbench for the iron component. But it's very simple. It's not that simple. Let's go back to the start. You put in, e.g., 2 iron and 1 copper, right? And it goes into a router which you can't see. It sends the copper out the top here, and that goes straight to the turntable, which will send it to either component, right? The iron or the steel goes into these, what are they called, presses, and then that gets routed either to this one or to this one. And then they both output through these chutes, and the output of this one is underground. And then comes out. Here it is. The output comes up into here. I love these chutes, by the way. I kept meaning to replace all of these, replace the up ones with like the vertical conveyors and replace any that go down with chutes. I did most of the downward ones with chutes just because you fall down the diagonals. You saw it a minute ago, whereas the chutes, it doesn't look like it connects, but it does. You just drop straight down into it and you don't fall down it yourself, which is much easier. Next up, we have the mechanical components. And man, this is fucking complicated. So this is annoying, right? And I do want to upgrade these, and I have a plan about what I'm going to do to upgrade these, but I'll get to that once I finish speaking. So this works perfectly, and I'm really proud of this, but the problem is sometimes it just doesn't work. And there's no reason for it to not work at all. Like it does work, and it works well. I think it's because there's just so many moving parts. I think every now and then something just gets lost. I don't know how Minecraft's tick rates work, but I think that must be it, right? So let's say we're making a light mechanical component. We'll put in 12 iron and 5 copper, right? They all go in here. The copper goes west, out here, straight up to the table, right? It's not needed for the other bits. The iron, in this case, goes east, which is along here. And you can see it's going into this item batcher, which is waiting for 4 of them. Once 4 iron bars go into here, it will release them into here, and then it will send a signal out here, send a white signal out there and onto this turntable, which will then turn that turntable 180 degrees, and the iron will start going this way. And once it's got 8 iron, it will release them and send another signal back to the same turntable, which will reset it back to where it was at the start. Right? Make sense? It does make sense, trust me. It's that flipping that sometimes doesn't work. Sometimes things just stay in here for no particular reason. It's very odd. Also, something you have to bear in mind is you can actually right click on the extracting conveyors to change the speed. You have to lower the speed, otherwise it all goes too quickly. So essentially that's how it works. And you can see the same thing happens for steel, 4 and 8, and then that uses orange, and it does exactly the same thing. It just flips that turntable. So essentially, 4 iron or steel goes into there, it sends a signal to flip the turntable, 8 go into there, it sends a signal to flip the turntable back to the start. So you can actually put in multiple sets of blocks, right? And it will just do it one by one like that. And the copper and the electrum, of course, just goes straight to... Does that go? Yeah, it goes straight to... What am I saying? It goes straight to the assembler. I'm trying to figure out, it's been so long since I made this. Where does that go? That doesn't seem to go anywhere. That's just copper and electrum. Copper out the top, electrum west. I feel like that conveyor belt's facing the wrong way. If I put... Hang on. Let's change it to heavy. There we are. Okay, so for heavy, I think you need copper and electrum, so it gets more complicated. So the steel bit is the same. Oh, I should mention, sorry, I'm back and forth. The reason you put 4 in there and 8 in there, the 4 go into these presses, which then get made into sheet metal. The 8 go into these presses, which get made into plates, which then go into here to make a component, and then the components and the plates and the copper or electrum go into here to make the block, right? When you're making a heavy block, as I am here, as you see it turn that turntable there. So it's now going into there. When you're just making light, the copper just goes straight out of there into here, and it just releases 1 copper. Hang on, I need to think, what's going on? 5 copper. Okay, no, this is different. So it works the same thing here, because you need some copper for the components, and you need 1 copper to actually make the mechanical block. So it first of all sends 4 copper in there to make mechanical components. Then it sends a signal here to flip that 180, and then it will send 1 copper out there all the way to the assembler at the end, and then that will send a signal to flip it back to the start there, right? For the heavy engineering block, a little bit different. It puts the copper and electrum into here. The electrum comes straight out here, out into the assembler. The copper goes straight out of the top, and then joins this to go straight to the automated workbench. Also, as you can see, when I press the button, it turns that turntable. At the moment, it's going to the heavy workbench, so the steel components. If I press it again, it'll flip it, so that turntable is now pointing towards, just to see it there, it's now going towards the far workbench, which is the steel, the iron components. I think we should try it, don't you? I've just gone on about how it doesn't work. 12 iron and 5 copper. I if it works. 12 iron, 5 copper. So let's see. Is it? I've put it in the wrong one. Put it in the wrong one, that's why. That's the input. There we are. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. See, it's just not flipped. It's just not flipped. And there's no reason why it shouldn't have. It just hasn't. So this is the situation that I've been faced with all the time, right? Because it does work, because sometimes I put it in and it works perfectly, and I tested it extensively on a creative raw first, and I know it works. It's just sometimes it just doesn't do it, which is a nightmare. But anyway, moving on. Redstone engineering block. This one's a bit easier. You just put your stuff in, and there's a route around here somewhere. There we are. It sends the copper and the redstone out the top. That goes straight through the middle to the assembler, and it sends the iron into these metal presses. See, I use splitters there to evenly distribute them, and you can see here I've used vertical conveyors instead of the sloped ones. I'd have to put. I say I could put a vertical one here and then just a straight one here to go into the crate, but whatever. This one's probably a little bit easier to see it in action. I'll get some redstone. I know that this one doesn't have any moving parts. It's a lot easier to deal with. 4 iron, 4 redstone, 1 copper. 4 iron, 4 redstone, 1 copper. There we are, they go at the top. The other stuff goes into these presses. And it'll all end up in here. It'll make those things. It'll make that first, then it'll make that. And the redstone engineering block will shimmy along. There it is. Into here. 4 of them, in fact. I'm just going to... whoops. Why has that stopped working? Oh, Jesus Christ. So, I just updated inventory tweaks, and clearly they've updated the... it's updated the shortcuts, which is annoying. Where does that go? Here. Yes, they've just decided to... Oh, what? Why didn't that work before? Weird. Yeah, so that's the idea with this. With the components, it goes along and you see it work through here and all that sort of stuff and blah, blah, blah. Then it'll go into the assembler. Right. What should we look at next? In fact, I'll talk about what my next plans are. So what I want to do next is, but I was waiting until I did this massive rewiring project, which we'll look at in a moment. I wanted to replace these with, I wanted to install the Pretty Pipes mod, which is basically logistics pipes from the old days. You can basically just connect it to your inventory. So it means as well, I won't have to worry about what blink and crate everything's meant to be in. These are meant to be sorted. They are sorted pretty well, to be fair. You can see we've got the wires, the connectors, the stuff, the transmission, you know. I won't have to worry if they're all connected to pretty pipes. I can just open an interface from the pipes to say, here is everything in here. And what I could do then is, essentially what I want to say is, okay, I need more heavy engineering blocks. I've only got one. Make me 8 more of them. What it will do then is, instead of having an individual construction line, I basically just have a set of presses that will have a pipe at the start of them that say, if you put a iron ingot in here, you'll get out an iron plate. If you put a steel ingot in here, you'll get out a steel plate. You know, basically just have a bank of presses with those interfaces on them. And then next to each assembler, you could have, say, you know, on the entrance to this, I'd say, if you put in 4 iron plates, you'll get 4 iron sheet metal out. So basically, when you tell the system to make something, it will look around for it in the system. If it doesn't exist in the system, it will then try to find it in crafting recipes that you've told it, and it will use them next. And so it'll basically create things like that. You know, I basically just have a couple of tables making steel components and a couple of tables making iron components, and it'll just use whatever's available, rather than having to use different. Because I set these up one by one, I've got different sets of the same thing, which is not very efficient. And also, like I said, those mechanical bits that flop around don't always work. So yeah, that's basically what I want to do next, is use logistics, but they're called pretty pipes, the mod now, to replace all of this. That way as well, it just makes things a lot easier to find. I don't have to remember which of the 6 boxes it's in. But yeah, so that's that. Speaking of the rewiring project, I'll tell you what, we'll get to that last, or not yet anyway, because that was one of the latest thing I've done. I love some of the engineers decor stuff as well. Danger, high voltage. Like I said, I've tried to make more of an effort with that sort of stuff rather than just crazy wiring everywhere. It is still crazy wiring everywhere, but there's a bit more of a purpose to it. Let's go upstairs to the windmills. Here, the standard windmill shape that I use. I love it. Engineers Decor has this cool stuff as well, like a catwalk. I've made extensive use of these. I've moved and changed a lot of things as I've played, but these sorts of things were a real help in getting things set up, I've got to say. And these ladders are great as well. If you look up or down when you're traversing them, you go faster. I can get onto them. There we are. I was going to put a control room up here, that control room. I put it over there instead. We'll get to that later. But yeah, it's cool, isn't it? Let's head down here. So this was the first biodiesel setup that I had, right? And I originally did just enough to make one to power one generator. Then I expanded it so it could power 2. And the one over there can power 6, but we'll get to that later. Because essentially, like, 2 generators can then power all of that, and then you can use that to power itself and you loop it back. But the way this works is, if you're not aware, is you cook up some hemp and some potatoes in these cloches. There's a set amount that you use, basically. And you power it, you provide it with water. And it goes into your squeezer to make plant oil, that goes into your fermenter to make ethanol. Those 2 go in here to make biodiesel, and that goes into your diesel generators. What I have discovered this time of playing is the magic of redstone connectors. Now, I'd never really looked into these before. Holy shit, they're amazing. So basically, the way I've got this set up is the signal threshold is 15, which means that it'll only start transmitting when this is full, right? When this is full, it means it'll send a magenta signal, right? That magenta signal goes up here, and it goes to here. And you can see here on the top left on the one probe, which, by the way, is like, everyone always uses like Whaler and all that sort of stuff. The one probe is basically like Whaler, but with like better features. It's really bizarre how, well, it astonishes me that the one probe isn't the most popular one, basically, because every other equivalent is just worse than it. But anyway. Swiggity. So what that does is, because that is full, that's sending a signal. So that's the threshold, right? So if I set that threshold to 7 or 8, it would start sending a signal when this was half full. But as it is, it only sends it when it's full. So it sends it on the magenta channel, which I've set up here, and I've set it up to go through all of these. So what that does is it sends a redstone signal to each of these cloches, which switches them off. So it says switch them off because these are full, we don't need any more. I did have it set up like here as well, feeding back to these, but you don't actually need that because this just fills up by itself and stops. And then when that stops, this will fill up, which means this will fill up, which means you don't need redstone to tell it to stop because it will just stop automatically because it fills up. The cloches don't stop automatically when the thing in front of them is full up, which is why you need a probe on the fermenter and the squeezer to tell the cloches to stop, to send the signal to the cloches to tell them to stop, right? So taking that to its umpteenth value, by the way, these take so much power. I set up all of these. You never used to be able to waterlog connectors, but you can now, which means you can have your thermoelectric generators working on all 3 sides, which is, or 6 sides rather, 3 axes, which is cool. So these provide me a total of 864 flux, which helps these, because otherwise they don't work at full capacity. But yes, let's take that to its umpteenth level, and we get this. So this is enough to power 6 generators. All of this is on the Feed the Beast fandom wiki, by the way. So again, we have the same thing here. When this is full, it tells everything to stop, although I've set it up a bit differently here. I set the threshold to 13, because it takes time for things to get here. So it actually now stops at around this level, you see. Which means I don't have things just building up here, and as you can see I've used the vertical conversion instead of sloped ones and droppers and everything. See, it seems a bit pointless having like to go down along and then back up again, but it means I can walk between them, which makes such a big difference. That's just started again. That isn't still generating. I think my biodiesel is pretty full, yeah. Yeah. I do have some generators running, but not all of them. So yeah, basically, and you can see what I've done with the wiring here as well, like along the ceiling and then down to them. This was all MV. I don't know how it works before, because MV wouldn't be enough for these 4 rather. But it seems to have been fine up to now. But when I did the rewiring, it suddenly didn't work, and I looked at the sums and I was like, hang on, there's not enough voltage from an MV connector. So I used HV for them. Everything else is still MV though. It's the same deal basically, the same connectors, same colors even. Then the pumps at the back here, you see I've stepped them down to MV just because I could. try and make it look like I know what I'm doing. But yeah, there's it's still what they're called, potatoes and hemp. It's the same deal. But now you're going into, you got 2 sets of them and a load of them, and now 2 refineries as well, doing the same thing. You see they're still chugging along a little bit. That one isn't, so I'm only using one at the moment. So all of that goes into my biodiesel tanks, which goes into all my generators. So that setup there is enough to power 6 generators. That's enough to power 2, I think. I think that's right. So I've got 8 in total here, right? By the way, after I did all my rewiring, I spent ages trying to figure out why none of the generators were running, looking at all the redstone wiring, figuring out what I'd done wrong, and then about an hour later I realised I needed to output the biodiesel. It was the equivalent of trying to see why your computer wasn't working and then realising you hadn't switched it on, you know. Anyway, so these work in a certain way where, we'll ignore this connector for now, we'll just look at this ones. They've each got a capacitor on the top. I don't know why they changed it to accumulator. Capacitor makes much more sense. I still call them capacitors. Come at me, Blue Sunrise. So what these do is, the receiving is not relevant here because all they do is send. But what you need to make sure you do is set it to a color that is different. In fact, I should mention this about the these things as well. If you send and receive the same color, then it will tell itself to stop, which is no help. You need to make sure sending and receiving are different colors. The reason this is magenta, by the way, is because I originally had one on the tank that was white, and then this one was orange, and then this one was magenta. But I've just kept it as magenta. Might as well. It's a nice color. Yeah, and then I've just made the receiving. So actually, the receiving was orange because it was receiving an orange signal from here. But you can set it to anything as long as it's not the same as the sending one. That's what I've done here. I've just arbitrarily picked red because I'm using black for all my my wires. So what this does is, see, I've set the threshold to 15. It means that when this capacitor is full, i.e. when it's hit the threshold of 15, it sends a white signal, and it sends it to this guy here, which is output white, and that switches the generator off. So that means that you don't have generators running unnecessarily, because otherwise they just run forever, unless you put a lever on them and switch them off, or repeatedly press a button if you're a lunatic. This means you can automatically switch them off, which is a game changer. It's just all this is a game changer in so many ways. Like in my previous world, I mean this was several years ago, mind, I had like a way to like drop things into like disposal chutes and stuff like that and all that rubbish. This just enabling you to switch it off automatically is just, it's a godsend. It's amazing. Right, the other thing that's been amazing about the redstone wiring, which has really unlocked a lot for me, is the fact that I realised that, so if we look at one of these, this is set to the white channel, right? So I always assumed that meant that, okay, you connect it to other white channels and that's that. Not so. Each redstone wire and connector carries all 16 of these channels. Which means that, so if we look here, so this is another one I've got here, this signal threshold is set to 0, so this will always output a white signal, right? And it's the same for all of these. This one is a yellow signal, this one is a light grey signal, and so on. Each one of these 8 generators has a different colour, right? And they're all set to, these ones are all set to 0, so they always output. So it's always outputting something to tell you how full the capacitor is. So you notice I've got all these different colours, e.g. yellow here and white here, and they're all going up into this black one. But the signal is still going. So that signal, and I'll explain all this in a second, but that signal carries on through here, through this feed-through insulator, and then out into here. No, god damn it. Long and short of it is, there are outputs up here, which are orange, lime, cyan, etc, etc, etc. And they're all traveling on that same wire. So you don't need to have one set of wires for green, one set of wires for cyan, one set of wires for lime. They can all 16 of them travel on the same wire. I have noticed some anomalies though, which is that because you have to pick a color for transmissions, if I was to make like request a change, it would be, can we have just a null so we can still use all 16? Because I've noticed that when I was using all 16 colors on one wire, there was some odd behavior because I think I was using the same color for the intermediary points. If we could just have like a null option that was no color, I think that might maybe solve it. I'm not sure. So what I've done is I basically just split everything into groups of 8. And so I just use these top 8 colors and then I use black for transmission. That's the way I've gone around it. So, what is all this, I hear you ask? What is all this? There you go. This, oh my god, this is my magnum opus. So, my magnum of pus. The generators, as you can see, and this is another reason I'm being creative, not only so I can get around quicker, but also to show you this, but also just so I don't get zapped by all these wires. Each of these generators outputs up there through a feed-through insulator. A feed-through insulator, by the way, even though it looks like you make it with connectors and it looks like a connector, it's the equivalent of a relay. So an HV connector can only output 4096 RF per tick, whereas a relay can output 8 times that. This feed-through connector, even though you made it with connectors, it can output 8 times. It functions as a wire and a relay, just in case you were wondering. And it's the same with this. Like, this ain't the color that I set, but it's just a feed-through. This basically just acts as a wire. That's how it works. So anyway, back to these. So this is the output from the generator here. Then it goes into this relay, which splits it into 4 breakers. So each of the generators outputs into 4 breakers. What are these breakers? Well, these breakers correspond to a sector of my compound, right? I've divided everything up into 4 sectors. They're originally like north, south, east, west, but I've decided to call them 0, 1, 2, 3. Let's just go on a tangent for a second about control engineering. The reason it's 0, 1, 2, 3 is because of control engineering. So whereas with these wires you have 16 options, control engineering lets you combine 4 wires into a bus wire. So you have bus 0, 1, 2, and 3, and then each of those buses, 0, 1, 2, and 3, has the 16 colors, right? The idea was I could put all of this on one wire, and then just change the bus. You have a bus interface that splits the bus wire off into a regular redstone wire. The bus interface every 20 minutes or so just reset to 0 every time, so it was just not going to work, unfortunately, which is a shame because I could have still used that. What I really wanted to use though was the control panels. You can have like a little control panel with switches and gauges and everything, and it's so cool looking. But it is the most stressful experience I've ever had in Minecraft. I'm a tinkerer, right? I like to check that one thing works and then expand it. You can't do that with control engineering. You've got to make the entire thing from scratch perfectly on the first go. And if you get it wrong, it doesn't tell you how it's wrong. It's just a fucking nightmare. It's an absolute fucking nightmare. Don't bother. It's not worth it. So I went through all, because I couldn't figure out how to do this with just regular redstone wires. I was like, I need to bust them. And I can have cool control panels. And I rage quit and uninstalled the mod, deleted all the items, uninstalled the mod. And then somehow, something about doing that made me realize how I could do it with just regular wiring. So my lesson to you all is, control engineering is really cool, but just don't bother. It's not worth the effort. It's not worth the stress. Anyway, so each of these sectors, 0, 1, 2, and 3. These redstone breakers, when you send a signal to them, they stop current flowing through them. So what this is a way for me to control which sectors each generator sends power to, right? Because each generator has a breaker for each of the sectors. And all of these sectors are joined together on these wires. And then they're all summed together up here. There's the sectors. And then from the other 4 generators, they're joined to the same wires. And then those wires go through these current transformers, which they tell you how much flux was going through them in the last 20 ticks, which is quite cool. 20 ticks is 1 second. What that also means is more probes, sending at 0. So what this does is it tells you, it sends a signal proportional to how much electricity is flowing through the wire. So the wire has a maximum capacity. This sends a signal, like if the wire is at max capacity, it'll send a signal of 15. If nothing's traveling through the wire, it sends a signal of 0, i.e. nothing. If the wire's at half capacity, it sends a signal threshold of like here in the middle. So this enables me to monitor how much is flowing through each sector. And then here we have more breakers, again, 1 for each sector. So these breakers are for each generator, so you can control which sector the generator sends power to. These breakers are for the sector in total. So these are effectively kill switches for the sector. I can switch off the entire thing, right? Which leads us to this lovely thing, and a mod I've discovered today called Gauges and Switches, which is made by the same guy that made Engineer's Decor, which is really cool. What this does is, it enables me to see, because this is what the control panels would have done, except it just would have been on like a little spot here instead of this massive thing. But this has its own sort of charm, I think. Annoyingly, I can't put anything around it, but it's all right. So as you can see here, the oil sector, that comparator on the current transformer, or the redstone probe, is telling me that it's currently at this much capacity, right? If it gets up here, that's when I've got to think, oh god, I've got too many machines, I need to start moving things into other sectors or make a new sector or whatever. At the moment, we're nowhere near capacity, hardly anything is on. This up here tells me how full the capacitors are. So I can see immediately if things start draining, oh, I need to put something else onto that sector because it's draining what I've put on it. So, for example, if I switch that one off, we might see that one start to deplete. Although the oil processing isn't running fully all the time because some of the things are backed up, so it's only like it runs intermittently. So maybe that's not the best example. But these switches as well are another one from Gauges and Switches, and you can invert them the same as these breaker switches. So by default, when they're off, they don't send a signal, but when they're on, they send a signal like a lever, but you can just invert it basically. So these are all off now, the red ones, and which means they're sending a signal. Which means that, so let's look at this one as an example. Generator number 1 is, the switch is off, so it's sending a signal to sector 0, right? We follow the wire around, which is generator number 1. This one, I think. There we go. It's sending a signal to that one, so it's not flowing. Whereas if we look at, let's see, generator number 1. So I've switched that switch on, which means there's no signal for sector 2. So we should see a signal for sector 0, 1, and 3, but not for 2, which means that power is flowing through sector 2. 0, 1, 2, no signal, and 3, no signal. So that's what that does, right? It enables me to control what generators are used for what sector. This is important because I know that that bit over there, so I've written this down all of that uses 5084 flux per tick if it's all running at once. It doesn't all run at once because some of it's backed up and the pumps don't always run, etc, etc. But it basically, that's 2 generators worth, right? Because that's 4096 per generator. So 5084 means I need 2 on it. That means I've decided that I'm just leaving 7 and 8 on biodiesel and not putting anything else on 7 and 8, right? It's that sort of thing. It's quite cool. And what if I haven't had any excavators running for ages because I've got so many resources now from them running for ages before. But it might be I can see if I can see there, if I put that one on, for example, I might see, oh, that's now starting to drain, so let's put a second one on it, and now it's not draining. Yeah, that sort of thing. But I could also say, like, okay, the intermittent, let's say that one was on the intermittent stuff. Because that's intermittent, it doesn't need to be on all the time, so I can put that on as well. The intermittent stuff is basically just running alongside the other stuff, right? The intermittent stuff is all this production lines. I should explain what the sectors are. It's these production lines, the assemblers, those 2 arc furnaces and the factory furnaces at the front there. So because those aren't going to be running all the time, they don't really need anything on them. Only the arc furnaces will need a few things on them when the excavators are running and when I'm making steel and stuff. The plan is to have a load of capacitors in front of all these production lines, once I upgrade them to the pretty pipes anyway. I don't know whether to leave this in place as in memoriam or just get rid of it. I think I might just get rid of it, to be honest, and just replace it with the other stuff. Whatever. Yeah, so the idea is I'll have like a battery of capacitors there. It doesn't matter if there's not enough power to power everything there, because even if I overshoot my capacity, the capacitor will just handle that. So yeah, we've got these switches to allocate things to different bits. And then these are the sector kill switches. Those operate those breaker switches there that I mentioned before. So that allows power through. That switches it off. It's pretty cool, eh? Pretty damn cool. I love these switches as well. Having a little red light and a green light is much more convenient because I installed this for the gauges only. But then actually when I looked at this, I was like, oh cool, I can have something to, like, instead of like a on-off, like up or down lever, which can be quite hard to see at first glance what's on, what's off, I can have one that's to the side, it's easier. And then I saw that, and I was like, wait a minute. How cool is that? It's so much better, right? I think that's everything I need to say here. Yeah, so the sectors, I did mention, the sector 0 is intermittent, which is basically all that stuff. Sector 1 is the biodiesel, which is all of that stuff, and the pumps and everything. Those pumps as well also fill up that water tank that I use for general purpose. Sector 2 is the oil, which is all that. We'll get to that in a second. And Sector 3 is the excavators, none of which are running at the moment. But I will have some going at some point. My next goal after, because I wanted production lines, I wanted oil. I did them in that order. And then now I want to do pretty pipes. I've never used them before. And then after that, I want to, for no particular reason, just set up like a big steel production facility, like a factory, because I'm making pet coke from there as well. So get an excavator digging up iron and have a big production line going. It'd be quite cool. So I tell you what, let's look at the not biodiesel, just diesel, crude oil. Got my pump jack. Got all my. I swear, you need so many tanks to deal with all the... When you first drill a well, the pressure pushes all the oil out, and it's just so much. Like, I swear you must need like 8 tanks to begin with. It's very strange, but anyway. I've got a similar setup here. I won't go into the whole how this works. If you look up the mod, Immersive Petroleum, I think if you follow the link to their wiki from their CurseForge page, there's a diagram, like a flow chart, which tells you how everything goes, basically. I basically just did that flow chart, then added extra machines where there was extra too much to process sort of stuff. So these are self-leveling, I mentioned, so you only need the comparator on one of them. On this one, it sends when it's full. It sends a white signal when it's full. And then that signal comes up here and switches off the pump jack. This pump jack over here is for water. Just FYI, because water is used for quite a few of these processes, and there was a water reservoir right there, so I thought, why not do that? It's got the same deal there with the comparator. That one's busy emptying. Is that reservoir empty, I wonder? Yeah, because that's not sending a signal. I think the reservoir is empty. Oh, it's got no power. Wait. Have I forgotten to power these? Oh shit, I have as well. I didn't realise that. Fuck's sake. Right, do I just deal with that briefly? Where's the oil one? Here. Annoyingly, it's slightly out of an awkward place, isn't it? This is where it gets a bit bird nesty. I'll do it in, I won't do it in creative, but I need to just figure out where this is going a second. I think we put one here, yeah? Right, brilliant. That's why I put ladders everywhere. Okay. Survival. I've been in survival and switching back between survival and creative a lot with this, because I've been like checking whether the redstone state is correct of something. Is like I don't want to like disconnect all the wires and everything. I'm just going to creative and check it and then walk back and go back into survival sort of thing. Right. Okay, yeah, so I think we want one here. That'd be awkward, isn't it? It'd be very awkward. Can I get past that? Yeah. I'm gonna die in a second, I'm almost certain. And to be honest, I don't ever walk over there, so I'm happy just to have that going straight. It wouldn't be immersive engineering without some like disgusting level of wires. Wait for it. There we go. I wonder if that will just reach straight over there. Should do, I think. Gotta get back somehow. Oh well, I was going to creative mode, fuck it. There we are. There we go. Okay, it's not empty at all. Right. Escape! Okay, so yeah, that's filling up now. I missed that, didn't I, clearly? There, that's going up. This is probably going as well, I imagine. Yeah. Nice, okay. So yeah, basically, so kind of, we have a few things here. So the crude oil goes and gets split into this stuff, load of stuff. See, we're getting, it gets split into 5 different things, but we're getting a bit of a backup of naphtha by the looks of things. That's full. This also has a thing where it'll switch. Yeah. Each of these has, yes, I remember now. Each of these will, I think they all send white. Yeah. When any of these are full, it'll switch that off. I didn't just break that wire, did I? No. Yeah, when any of these are full, it'll switch that off, but, so naphtha, bit of a surplus of that at the moment. Naphtha goes into high pressure refinery unit. I think I've only got one of them making naphtha, yeah. Naphtha's not that important really. I might start burning that off actually. I won't do that now. But yeah, the naphtha you make into cracked naphtha, which essentially you make into Duraplast, which is like a replacement for terracotta. That's all this stuff here, right? And again, we have a thing here. Ah, yeah, so this is quite interesting. Because you can deter, I mean, there is a fluid router, but what I've read is that it's not incredibly efficient. Effective, rather. It sometimes doesn't do it properly. So what I've got here is, because there are 3 different outputs, I don't want, for example, one of these tanks to run out. Imagine the ethylene tank runs out, and then the next liquid that comes out is propylene. What if that goes into both of them? Do you know what I mean? So what these have is they're sending and receiving on the same channel. Normally you wouldn't do that, but you apply a redstone signal at the bottom of these to output it. The signal threshold here is 1. So what that means is it will output when there's when this is 1/16 full. And then when it drops below 1/16 full, it will stop outputting, which basically means that these will never empty, which means that it's a way of routing without using a router, basically. It's quite handy. Then they go into all this stuff and blah, 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 blah. Let me click on it. Is there meant to be biodiesel in there? How did that get in there? There's not meant to be biodiesel in there. Could be creosote. Propylene and benzene into creosote. Why is there? I don't know why there's biodiesel in there. Let's just ignore it. And that goes into resin. I think I've switched this off at the moment. What's this do? Oh, that waits for it to be a bit more full. Yeah, this will only start when it's receiving. Oh, hang on, what's this? Dispenser. Oh, I see, it'll dispense that when this is full. Oh, I don't fucking know. Right, it doesn't matter. But yeah, this is basically it. Like I said, it's not worth getting into all the nitty gritty, although I just have. I just think it looks quite cool. So this is like gasoline. I don't need that, so I'm just burning it off. How cool is that? Okay, I think this is set to threshold of 1, set on the same channel. Yeah. They only output gasoline additives, and then it's just set to always be on. It'll just burn whenever there's any more gasoline additives. I'm very happy with this. And this is basically making my my diesel and getting some extra shit. That's going to be full up soon, but that just means I make another one. That's the way I'm doing it, basically. Big sprawling industrial complex encroaching on the local natives, as opposed to the non-local natives. Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? I like it. The pipes going everywhere. Very cool. And I've added some like walkways around everything as well, as you can see. Because there's a ladder up the side of the thingamablob. Then I use these as, so they're for the wires really, to keep the wires out of the way. I thought they worked quite well as just a general walkway. See, out above the wires, crucially, so I'm not gonna get like killed by any of them. Yeah, I think it's quite cool. And I've done things like this as well, where like instead of just having the pipe coming along, I've actually added like a structural arm to hold it, which I think is quite neat. I haven't done that everywhere, but like here, just added a few. I think it looks cool. I don't normally do it, so I'm quite proud of it. I'm not much of a like a prettying things up person normally. I'll either like, if I'm building something, I'll like have a set picture of a thing I want to build, and then I'll try and build that, like I replicate something. Not very good at coming up with stuff by myself, so happy with that. Yeah, the coker is a really cool machine. Just the way it works is quite neat. I've got a similar thing here as well, where this outputs bitumen. What you mean? I eat my hummus without brem. It's empty at the moment. I've set this in such a way that when this is at 11, because basically it takes time for things to get there before, so this will kind of fill up and then this will stack up, and if you end up with too much bitumen in there, if you switch it off at a higher if you have a higher threshold, a load of bitumen is still coming and it just builds up there. I've discovered if you set it at 11, it stops, and then enough arrives and you end up with like 62, 63 odd in there. So yeah, that stops that basically. I think I inverted it or something like that. I can't remember exactly what I did. It's inverted, so like it's... Or is that the inverted one? I think you can invert the bottom of the silo so that it outputs all the time, but stops when you send the signal. Normally it does the opposite. Doesn't seem to be doing anything at the moment. I'm a little bit confused. It normally, the bitumen normally like fills up this, and then it flushes it all out. And don't really know why it's not doing anything. And then it'll put pet coke in there, and then it'll crush the pet coke, and then you get crushed pet coke. And then I've got nothing to use that for yet. That's what I want to send into the steel production. I don't know why this didn't do anything. He's added a ladder there as well, so I can get up this way and onto here. I suppose the sensible thing to do, if I realised, I would have put all of that bit underground. It would have just started there, but the fence around the high voltage wires. Maybe it just needs considerably more. Oh, there we are. A bit went in and then didn't, then disappeared. There we are, sulfurized diesel. and then it flushes it. I was doing it a bit weird. See, normally it just fills up all the way and then flushes it with water, but it seems to be doing a bit at a time and then flushing it, which I don't think is right. It seems to be working. It's coming out of there and going into there. So yeah, that's kind of the whole point of having the... I'm waiting to see if anything goes into there. 2, 4, 6, 3. Should do. Nothing's coming out though. Oh, that's because this isn't fucking connected. God's sake, I've done it again. Right, hang on. There we are. There we go. For God's sake. Problem with rewiring. There, let's just start to send things up now. There we go. That's more like it. Yeah, so this is a bit, this is all connected, isn't it? So, it should be. From that one, yeah. I'm not sure why it's working like this. Because normally what you would see is, this would fill up with... bitumen. Hang on, what goes into here? Just bitumen. What else? There we are. Sulfurized diesel. I'm obviously not getting enough sulfurized diesel. Okay, that's right, it's because I'm not getting a load of sulfurized diesel. Normally this would fill up with sulfurized diesel. And then the bitumen would like go club, 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 and then it would flush it all with water, and then it would start the next one. It would do like one tank at a time, which is how they work in real life. I'm not sure why it's decided to just do it one by one, because that's the whole point of having this this comparator on here, is that it would fill up and take a bit of time to flush it out. I can only assume that this must be full. It isn't full. I'm just not getting very much of it. I think it's because that naphtha's backing up. So maybe that'd be the next thing I do then, is sort out that naphtha. I'm actually just gonna grab this because it suddenly occurred to me I had no sugar. So I needed to... Which is why I had that recipe to make paper out of sawdust. I had to quickly wrangle something. I needed I need a few cloches just making paper, making sugar cane. Let's have a little investigation, shall we? I think if I start burning the naphtha off, it'll probably solve a lot of problems. I always seem to have I'm looking up online as well, that seems to be a common problem. These are the sulfurized diesel ones, I think. Which ones are they? Sulfurized diesel. Is it sulfurized diesel? This is still going, I think, because it's still outputting sulfur. Where the output is, that's the output in it. Yeah, and that's the pipe that then goes all the way back. I'm following it with my eyes just about. It goes all the way back to the diesel things. Well, where's the sulfurized diesel coming for the coker unit then? Hang on, let's follow the pipe. One of these is water, one of these is diesel. That's water in it. Yeah. That's fine. That one. I think. Yeah, so this is the diesel. See, the naphtha's backed up. I think it's deep. Hard to tell. They're all joined together. Another look at this again. I think it's sulfurized diesel. I've just forgotten is the problem. Sulfurized diesel, yeah. Yeah, see that seems a bit... Because surely I'm putting all of that into the HPU to make diesel. It's very confusing. I knew this intimately when I was doing it. It's been so long since I've actually looked at it now. I just going difficult. I mean, this is still doing something. Then gasoline additives, that's just not doing anything really. This is from kerosene. Oh, is this just a second one because this one was so slow? Yeah. That was kerosene, because I think they're both going to the same thing. Kerosene, looking at the flowchart, goes into there. Oh, does that give me more sulfurized diesel? I think it does. I don't understand how I'm differentiating between the sulfurized diesel that comes out of the first distillation tower versus the sulfurized diesel that comes out of HPU. Hang on. Oh, the coker makes sulfurized diesel. Bitumen, water, pet coke. Oh, okay, that makes more sense. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Okay, now I understand that weird arrow on the flowchart. They're not loops, because obviously they're not like infinite, but it's hard to tell where some of those arrows are going. Okay, so it's just chucking it in there, and there's a bit of sulfurized diesel that it's made, now it's throwing it out. I'm flushing it with water. Yeah, I don't know why it's not filling up anymore, that's really strange. It's strange that. Is that ascending on a... Only ascending. Weird. But anyway. That makes sulfurized diesel, that's right then, I feel better about that. So that's it, that's the base, that's the whole thing. Bit of a sort of a loose format, as I'm sure you've seen. This needs a bit of scaffolding going down on the corner. There's just room for it. I'm just going to do that to make it look a bit nicer. Put on there as well. At the very least we can do that. Oop. Yeah, I've got some. Here we are. I've got some. I'll give it ya. Walk into a wire. There we go. That looks a bit nicer. Help! Help! I'm trapped! Okay. There we are. So yeah, this is the compound. Pretty neat, eh? Yeah, definitely do something about that naphtha. Backing up a little bit. But otherwise it's pretty cool. Like, obviously, eventually that crude oil is going to run out over by that pump jack. When it does, it's just a simple case of finding another, or simple it says, finding another oil well and setting up another pipeline, essentially. I'll keep all this in the same place. It looks mad, doesn't it? This rewiring, it was this mad idea that I had. I'm so glad I finally sorted it out. It took me a while. Various breaks from it needed and stuff like that. That's all of that. The generator hall. That's that sector. That's that sector. See, they kind of are almost like little quadrants, aren't they? Jan Quadrant Vincent. Well, that's the missing quadrant. That's the excavators. And yeah, the other thing I should have mentioned as well is I made sure that this biodiesel facility, even though what you can do once you've got it started, you can then power it with a diesel generator that you've power from itself, so it kind of loop back. I wanted to make sure that I always had this powered. So this runs off of 6 water wheels and those thermopiles, thermoelectric generators. So this will always run, because that powers the 2 generators that power this. And this is, yeah, so like, this is the powerhouse. This is the powerhouse that powers the powerhouse. It's like, if this is the heart, these are the mitochondria. That's the sort of thing, right? But yeah, with this, I'm unstoppable. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I will see you next time. Bye. Well, next time, if there is a next time. Maybe once I've done the pretty pipes, I'll come back and show you that, but who knows when that'll happen. See you whenever. Bye.